All right, here we are Wednesday night for our little chat. We're going to talk tonight about miscarriage and how postpartum depression can affect people with miscarriage. And that's kind of our topic tonight. We're going to kind of go over just what level 1 feels like today. We're going to cover level 2 and level 3 next week in the coming weeks, so look for that. And again, we just want to remind you guys that we're here for you this time of in our country even, and just in the world. It's just there's added stress to stuff that's already going on in your life, and it can just bury you deep. So we want to be here to support you and help you out and give you words of encouragement and just really be a lift and a light for you guys, for ladies and even men that are dealing with this.
Elise, you mentioned the stressful times right now in our country, and I think that it's really important for us women to find a balance between the stress of the news and all of that and joy in our home, because we're kind of the ones that balance our home. And so at some points, we just have to unplug from the news and the social media, and just, unless you're here getting support on Healing Mama Hearts. But yeah, I think it is important that we have a good balance and not get too stressed about the news and stuff.
Yeah, there's great wisdom in unplugging for a little bit. Just deal with what's in front of you, not the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. And we just want to remind you guys that our goal is to make those healing sanctuaries. I wanted to mention that real quick. We so badly want to make a place for women to go, a physical place where people can come and heal. So that's always been our goal, and we're just going to keep working toward that goal. So invite your friends to our group, follow us, and we want to get resources together and get that going. So.
Elise, I was going to say the only thing that keeps me going, because it really is, you put a lot of work into a nonprofit organization to get it going and to get your name out there and to support other women and do the things that we want to do. It takes a lot of work and no pay but the thing that keeps me going is listening to women. A lot of times I'll get a text or a message or a comment that's somebody saying, hey, this really helped me today, and that keeps me going, right? It keeps you going too, probably, huh?
That's so awesome to hear from you ladies whenever we do videos and stuff, to hear how it affects you and things like that. So that's our gasoline, our fuel to keep us going.
Yeah.
We're talking tonight about miscarriage. I've had a miscarriage in my life, and Janet, you've had one too. I think.
Yeah, I've had 2. Yeah. So one point I wanted to bring up, Elise, is like, no matter how far along you were when you had a miscarriage, you still have just tons of emotions around it. Well, most people do. I mean, you might get somebody that's like, yeah, it just wasn't a big deal. I haven't heard that kind of comment very much from women. Usually it is kind of a big deal, and it doesn't matter how far along you are. A miscarriage is a miscarriage.
Right. That's kind of how I felt with mine. It was pretty early on. It was 10 weeks, and then had the miscarriage. And for a while, I had had a friend who had miscarried not that long for me. And I just saw her go through a lot of grief and mourning and stuff. And then when I had mine, at first it wasn't a big deal. I was like, okay, it's I wasn't that attached. I couldn't even feel the baby move. But what surprised me is the emotions later. Like, it took maybe a month or 2 before my emotions were like, I lost something, I actually lost something.
Yeah.
It took a while for me. And it be delayed. It doesn't have to happen right away.
That's a good point, because delayed grief is a real deal, and it's almost like your body kind of gives you some space for a minute, and then it allows you to look at that experience again and process those emotions. And maybe at the time you were pretty focused on your friend and what you could do to help her. It's amazing how our body is just so good about bringing it up if it needs to be healed, even if it's later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And that's one thing, even if you don't feel sad about it right away, it's okay to feel sad about it later. And it was a child, it was a baby, and you are a mom. It doesn't, matter that the baby passed away.
Yeah.
At a young age.
I find that even just talking to women that are dealing with miscarriages, and even making my video the other day, it kind of brought a new level of healing. Like, I felt emotional about it still. And it's been 20 years since my last miscarriage. Well, no, it's been about 19 years, but it's interesting when you really come from heart and you really try to understand what other women feel, and you start feeling that emotion again, of that. So I think that it's just kind of always there for you, but maybe just so that you have an understanding of other women. Maybe not in deep grief forever, but just kind of an understanding and a compassion for women that go through it.
I like that grief becomes compassion. It doesn't heal, it doesn't go away. Grief just becomes compassion for others.
Yeah, it just makes you feel on a deeper level, I think. And really, grief is all the emotions with grief are straight from God. Like, they're not bad emotions. Sadness, guilt, anger, none of that is bad. It's all there to show us more about ourselves and about other people. And all the different, I guess there's 5 different stages of grief, and you don't really go in order of what it can be any order. It can switch back and forth. But and I'm sure you guys have all heard the 5 different stages of grief. So let's talk a little bit about just ways that we can support each other and another person. Hopefully the women that, hopefully the women around you are willing to tell you, that they're dealing with that. Because that's really the only way you'd really know, is if somebody said, yeah, I'm experiencing a miscarriage, or I had a miscarriage. And I thought that was really cool. I'll give you a little example of that. Somebody being willing to tell me that they were grieving. I went to a place. I promised a person that I would paint their bench out by their Airbnb and make it all bright and cheery. And in order to do that, I had to walk through somebody's yard. And I knew it was an elderly lady. I take Meals on Wheels to her, and she's elderly, and I knew she would be nice and be okay with it, because he was redoing his driveway. And anyway, I had to walk through her yard. She came out and said hi, and I went about my business. And after I asked her if I could park my car by her car. Anyway, and then I worked on the bench for a couple hours, and then I was walking back to the car, and she was sitting there on a little chair that was right by a table, and there was another chair, and she looked really sad. And I kind of paused for a minute, and the thought came to me, you need to slow down. And I said, hey, how are you doing? And I called her by name, because she had reminded me of her name again. And she said, well, I don't know if I'll be okay. And I said, what's going on? And I sat down by her, and she said, I lost my husband on the 10th. And I just thought, oh, I dropped, put my bags down that I was carrying and my things, and just sat there and listened to her. So it really is, my point is, it's really does you a favor when you're dealing with grief. And it does other people a favor to be truthful and to be vulnerable, because it gives us a chance to sit down and say, tell me about it. You know, she told me some great stories about her husband, and just like, it was really neat, really cool to learn a little bit about her and him. So we have to be willing to reach out to people and say, yeah, I'm really struggling, you know.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of address that before addressing ways that things we could say to help somebody is, first off, be willing to say, I am really dealing with some intense sorrow, or I'm dealing with this, you know.
Yeah. With my friend that was pregnant, I was pregnant too. So when my friend was having the miscarriage and I was pregnant as well, she could have totally reclused. She could have been like, not telling her she's got a baby, I would ruin her happiness or whatever. You have those feelings of like all the different reasons why we shouldn't tell somebody, or, I don't know if that's just guilt telling us to not reach out. But she did. She was actually, I babysat her daughter. I was her babysitter.
Wow.
And so I remember I went to the store and I got her a yellow rose, and I put it in her face and brought it to her, and it was good. I'm glad that she told me and didn't try to hide it or like she couldn't have hidden it from me, because I already knew she was pregnant, and if the baby didn't come, I would know. But if she had been reclusive and been like, I don't talk to you about it, I don't want to, whatever,
Yeah.
But it was good because I could talk to her and listen to her.
That is so cool that she was willing to be vulnerable and just let you know. Of course, there's some things that when somebody does let you know, or when you do know that somebody's dealing with a miscarriage, there are some things that, and I've kind of gone over them before in a video, but we can do it again. But just things to not say, like, you're still young. At least you have one healthy baby, or even 10 healthy babies. Don't even say that, because where it might be true, it's still not, it's not, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's not, like, it's kind of disregarding their pain.
Right.
So you think you're making it better, but you're not really.
That's my rule of thumb, is like, if you're trying to remove the pain with one of your comments, it's not appropriate.
Oh, that's true.
Because that's kind of any kind of thing that I hear, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't say this, and you start to think, what could I say? What am I supposed to say? And so whenever I'm trying to deal with someone who's dealing with grief or sadness, I think, what I'm about to say, is it trying to take away their pain? Is it trying to make it smaller? Because it's not going to help. But if I say things like, I'm here for you, I'm willing to listen, I am mourning with you, that's going to be a lot more supportive.
Oh, that's such a good point. Because your motive is the problem, not exactly what you're saying, but the motive of trying to, and it's you mean well when you try to minimize someone's pain, but in doing that, you minimize their grief. Like, you literally are like telling them it's not that bad, but you're trying to make them feel better. So you mean well,
right,
but it's not a good idea. That is such a good point, to stop and think, am I trying to take this pain away and minimize the pain? I am sure I've said things like this to people, just not knowing what to say.
Right.
And just being awkward.
Because it does feel awkward. It's awkward to let that pain stay there. And so naturally we're like, we got to make it get away. We got to push this feeling away,
Why is pain so awkward?
I don't know.
Is it because we're like, I mean, do we think that we have so much influence on somebody that we can make them happy? And so then when they're sad and grieving, then we think we can, say the magic thing to make them happy, when really the happiness comes from within, right? I don't know. We could really get into psychology here.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I think that's, if it's, I think grief and sadness is uncomfortable for the person who's experiencing it anyway. And then people on the outside who are like, I don't know where these feelings are coming from. They don't understand the connection that you had or whatever, and so that makes them uncomfortable, and like they're trying to, I've made this person happy in the past, just saying jokes and doing things, I just want them to be happy again. I don't want them to suffer. We don't like seeing suffering.
And I think that's human nature, and I think that's great, and that's good that we have that characteristic, this aspect about being human, is that we would rather see people happy. I think that's great, but we have to acknowledge the fact that really their happiness comes from within and from God, and their connection with God, and it's not really as much about us as we'd like to think it is, right? But so one thing that you mentioned is like you just did little things for your friend. And so checking in with them often, and not just once and then running and hiding, is a good idea. Bringing them something small like you did. Like, you didn't have to remodel their whole house. You brought her a little rose, a tiny little rose, things that are that small. When a friend of mine, her mother died, and I took her a lilac bush, just a little one. I mean, it was just a little plant, with one little stem, and she planted it, and she loves it. So maybe even something with roots, but it doesn't have to be a big deal, just something.
Yeah.
Okay, so checking in often. So also remembering their baby off and on, and not just totally worried that if you bring it up, you're going to cause them to cry. They might cry, but it might be tears of, I am so glad you didn't forget my baby, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I love it when somebody will bring up my mom. It's like, oh, good, you didn't forget her. Me neither. So I think that that's important to just, not get so busy that you forget completely about that person's baby.
Yeah, it's good to, don't be afraid that you'll, make it worse. You can't make it worse.
Yeah.
You can't make it worse.
Yeah.
Well, you could make it worse by saying the wrong thing, but you can't,
Yeah. Their grief is their grief, and it's so individual, and it's so part of the fact that they loved that baby is why they're grieving. So why would you want them to not have grief? Because that's kind of an actual symbol of that they love that baby, right? So one of the things too is to be a good listener. And like I've said in other videos, Elise, that we've made, you've always been the kind of person that will just sit there and listen to me. Like, you'll just sit there and listen, and it doesn't look like you're trying to figure out what to say next, or you don't seem judgy about my thoughts or my experiences. You just listen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can tell someone's they're like on the edge, they're ready to say the next thing.
me.
They're like, oh, I've got an answer for that. I'll wait till they're done talking and then I'll say it.
That's me. Oh, that's me. Okay, so we talked about don't minimize their loss, like let it be as big as it is, and be comfortable with it. In the, avoid asking them when they'll try again. Like, sometimes it's tempting to have small talk like that, but that's probably not a good question. And then don't offer unsolicited advice. Like if they ask, hey, what do you think about this or that, then you can comment on it, but don't say, hey, if you do this next time, maybe, take these vitamins or whatever, because it'll help you keep the baby longer or work, not unless they ask, right?
That's the biggest thing. Like, that's my biggest pet peeve is don't ever, ever tell the mom that, it must have been something you did. It must have been something that you exercised too much. You ate the wrong things.
Because they're already stressed out and thinking that about themselves. They're already blaming themselves. Like,
yeah. And I just remember I got questioned about that too. Like, I didn't think that at all. And then someone said, is it something, were you exercising too much or whatever? Because back then I was like running miles and miles and just doing lots of exercise, and that was one of the things they brought up, and I was just like, go away.
I did not need to hear that.
That's one of my biggest ones. I'm like, don't ever tell a mom that, was it something that you did? Was it something you could change? It's not. It was.
And I'll tell you what, say it was something that they did, they felt like, hey, this is what I did that caused this. They will know, and they will know what to do, and they do not need any little hinters or thoughts, or they just know a lot more about their body than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because, like, I don't remember the percentage, but there is a really high percentage of women that have miscarriages, at least have had one miscarriage. I think it was like, it was 25% or something have had a miscarriage, or it was crazy high.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just happens. Like, maybe there isn't a really big aha reason,
Yeah.
So we don't have to figure each other out. We don't have to figure out why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing I wanted to bring up that I was thinking while we were talking is that men can go through postpartum depression during miscarriage. They were excited about a baby too, and they were falling in love with something as well. The idea of having a little one, and they lost something as well. But I don't think that men talk about it as much. With the cultural norms of our society, they don't express any kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Another aspect is if both parties, both the spouses are both or partners both grieving and both like postpartum depression 1 and 2 levels, it would be really hard for them to support each other because they're both dealing with grief, right? And so it's like, it's just so thick, and it would be really important for somebody to be able to recognize it and come in and say, hey, what can I do to help you? So what do you think some of the symptoms of postpartum depression with grief? I mean, the thing about grief, though, Elise, is you're going to have all these symptoms, you're going to have all these things, but if you're stuck with different, like there's the 5 stages of grief, and if you're stuck and you just can't, I mean, you'll never like get over it, because it just changes you. But if you get stuck in where you can't even function, and then it's very important to have your spouse or your partner be able to say, hey, what can we do for you? I can see that this is going on so long. But if he is also really in postpartum depression too, that's pretty that's probably would be the worst case scenario, is both people are involved in the postpartum depression, right?
Right. Yeah. It makes it difficult to help each other. Yeah.
What's that?
Gonna have to keep an eye on the men.
Right, because they act so tough.
Right. They try to cover it up more, I'm sure, than women.
And so many times there's a stigma where men shouldn't be going through postpartum depression. But why do we have those shoulds and shouldn'ts? Like, they were excited, they may not even have the hormone drop like a woman does, but they definitely could feel grief, on so many levels. Yeah, it's interesting how men can deal with it, but they don't show it. So it's kind of a quiet, probably a little bit more dangerous when guys slip into it, because they're usually the ones that we turn to, us women turn to. At least I've always been that way. Turn to my husband and oh yeah, I'm dealing with this, and kind of lay it on him, right? But if your husband is in grief too, you would really have to rely on your friends, or go and get counseling, or go to a doctor and see what he can do for you. You'd have to get some help, outside help.
Yeah. I've noticed, though, whenever I feel like any kind of depression or anxiety or anything like that is a roller coaster for me. Like, I've noticed, and if I notice my husband is kind of down too, one thing that I like to do, if I'm having an up moment and I'm feeling good and I feel like I'm actually a little bit in control of that day, I'll ask him, hey, what's one thing I can do for you? What's one thing I can take off your plate?
Oh, nice. That's a good one.
And I don't try to do everything for him. He's got a huge plate to take care of.
Yeah.
If I can,
Does he usually answer?
And get it done for him.
Does he usually tell you?
He gives me
That is
yes.
awesome.
He'll give me a little thing that I can accomplish for him at home or whatever, because he's got, home stuff and work stuff and church stuff and just lots on his mind, on his plate.
That is such a good point. If there was one thing I could do for you, what would it be? Something that I can do for you to ease your stress and your mind a little bit. Yeah. That is such a good point. And I think sometimes guys don't want to talk to their wives or their spouses or their partners about it, because they might feel like that person's too weak to handle it. Like, if that person's dealing with postpartum depression as well, then the husband would be less likely to lay his concerns and worries and grief out on the table too, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that can help, though. That can heal if you guys connect and compare notes and, what are you feeling? This is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that too. You won't be so lonely. Or, or maybe say, these are the emotions and feelings I'm having. Are you having any of these too?
Yeah.
Connect with them, and I think that.
One thing that I'd heard, I don't remember who I heard talking about this, but I remember a woman saying that the hardest thing about her miscarriage is when she started out with another pregnancy. So she didn't really start grieving and going through all the different stages of grief until she started out with another pregnancy.
Mm.
And so then she was really, really, how would you put it? Really confused and stuff, because she's supposed to be so happy that she's starting out again, but yet it just brought back a lot of what if, and this and that, what should I do different? What if this is a failure? And so that's kind of an interesting thing to watch out for with your friends is, when they start out again after a miscarriage, there might be a lot of just like anxiety and worry about it.
The word that I was thinking of, and that's my experience too. Just the anxiety is higher whenever you get pregnant the next time or whatever. You just worry a lot more about losing it because that possibility is much more real.
Right. And I also think that if it's like a double miscarriage, like a miscarriage one right after another, would be so hard. And now, that would be like incredibly hard to bounce back from or to walk through. I guess you don't bounce back really, you just walk through it and learn to deal with it. But I think that a double one would be really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's more of a like maybe you'd feel more like hopeless, and the feelings that would go with that would be just, just hopeless and sinking maybe, or but it would have to be, that would be a really tough time. And there's many women that do have a miscarriage, then another miscarriage right after. And we're going to talk about the infertility, that's kind of more along those lines, right?
Right.
Our next video.
Yeah, our next topic. So we'll do this topic a couple more times. I'm talking about the 3 levels, and then we'd like to do a topic on infertility.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I'm really hoping that people will leave comments under this video, and give us some ideas and just open up about what they've experienced. We've already gotten quite a bit of comments on one of the videos, or maybe it was a post that I posted of something, but I love reading different people's experiences, and it also, I think, gives another level of healing and understanding for the women that read it and might connect with it and go, oh, that's kind of where I was at and kind of what I was feeling. And
I'm not alone.
yeah. So I think sometimes people think that healing after a miscarriage is just you just kind of walk on a steady path. And I think it's really just kind of a up and down process. Like you might think that, oh man, I've done so good this week. I've just been able to really not fall apart. And then next thing you know, you're falling apart. And so I think that it's just kind of like, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're not. So be patient with yourself and be patient with your friends that are dealing with it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's okay to not feel normal for a long time.
Yeah, definitely let friends go up and down with their feelings. It's not all one straight line. Yeah.
So it's like riding the waves, maybe. Maybe if you can look at it like, you ride the waves, you ride on top of the wave, and you don't, let it sink you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Good. Well, thanks for chatting with me tonight.
Yeah, it's been good, Elise. It's been good. I'm glad that we're back to making our videos. I love it. I love it. Please comment below the video if you made it this far. Thank you so much, Elise. I love chatting with you. I love making videos, and I love doing the Healing Mama Hearts with you.
Yeah, I love
It's
it
awesome.
too. All right.
Thanks so much.